Hello, it's wonderful to have all of you back in the studio with us. Today we will be looking at the subject of fatalism, superstition and blind faith. Hello and welcome, Sister Denise.
Hello, thank you.
So this subject is a thorny issue in the side of many, because whether people want to acknowledge it or not, we all have our personal gripes and beliefs that may not make sense to anyone else, but we feel it and we believe it and we act accordingly. So let's take them one by one. How would you define superstition?
Before we even get into the individual words, overall, the background of fatalism, superstition and blind faith is this concept of destiny. And we're looking at this sort of interplay between the laws of karma, which we have been talking about deeply to understand them and operate in the context of them. But destiny is a different energy altogether. A lot of people feel viscerally that there is such a thing as destiny. In the Western world they use the word providence. People believe that it's just there, it's fixed, and there's nothing you can do about it regardless of the laws of karma. And this is why people become fatalist or superstitious, because destiny, it's like it's already written, nothing you can do. And so this is also why people give up. They say it's destined, can't do anything. And so in response to your request to define superstition, in the context of destiny, people read magically signs, and they say this sign means something because it's destined. You know, the background of it is destiny. It's rather like astrology. Astrology is to be able to read the meaning in the configuration of the stars, and they say this influence is there and that influence is there and so on. But behind it all, you know, the stars move in fixed positions over a 28,000 year cycle, and a human being can't do anything about where the stars are going. And so they feel the stars are dictating our life. So we don't have any power. With the law of karma, it's in your hands. You have the power to choose what you will do. And if you understand the law of karma well, you will choose wisely. But in the face of destiny, your primitive reaction is to try to acquire control through this superstitious mentality. And it's very much to do with magical thinking. That such and such a thing means such and such another thing, and there's no connection between the two. So you see a black cat passing by, you say, that's bad luck. In Indian mythology, they say Krishna looked at the moon on the 4th day of its cycle, and because of that, he had bad luck. You know, you can't make a connection between this. So there's complete lack of logic. It's also connected with another much deeper idea, very, very deep idea. And that's connected with this concept of kairos time, which is a Greek concept. Kairos time refers to events which are dramatic and life-changing, and that just make a huge difference to what happens next. When something of great importance is about to happen in the wheel of time, which is itself destined, there are signs of it beforehand, because you may need to adjust yourself in front of such huge changes. And the big change that people are thinking about at the moment is climate change. Now, the big debate among the environmentalists is whether climate change is human-induced or not. I don't think there's any question that there is climate change, but, you know, the finger is going, who's responsible? So the liberal environmentalists say, we are responsible. These are the people who believe in karma. We messed up the oceans, we burnt the Amazon, we polluted the rivers, we are responsible. But it's also destined. So whether human beings did anything or not, it's going to happen anyway. And so the signs of it are what create the superstition. So a person who is very superstitious will be always looking for signs, you know. Oh, there's a biggest storm ever. This means God is upset. This means the end of the world is nigh. This means something, something, something. What definitely happens with climate change is the harvest fails. There's no food. And when there's no food, there's a big problem. Famine. If there's no water, it's a big problem. Famine. There are many climate change refugees. So when you're a refugee, your comfortable life becomes a nightmare. So these things are destined, and destiny comes around every cycle. And so all of this superstition is connected with ancient memories getting triggered again, because now that time or those times are now here, and so they get very scared and they become practically paralyzed and they give up. You know?
How would you draw the distinction between proper faith and blind faith?
Yeah, that's a good question. For proper faith, I would say considered. You look at all the information, the data, you look at the laws that govern what happens, laws of karma, and you understand the logic of it. The more you have information, the more you have clarity of understanding, the more you have faith in it because you understand it. Blind faith is where you accept something without understanding it. You cannot see the logic. You cannot process your beliefs. You cannot articulate your beliefs properly. You can't really defend them. You just say, this is what I believe. Or you say, it's a mystery, but this is what it is. And so a person with blind faith will easily go into superstition and very easily become fatalistic. So these three words, they go together very well. Somebody who has faith in something because they know how it works, they know what it is, they know there's no mystery about it, and there's no magic, it's all very clear. So they will act upon it in a rational, logical manner because they understand it. There's nothing blind about it.
How does an individual become fatalistic? What brings them to such a point?
Partly it's culture. I think mostly it's culture. It's compounded by their experience of things being the way they are, or that corresponds with their belief that they grew up with, that everything is fated, there's nothing you can do. And people just do not strive, they do not make effort, they become like passive, you see. And so one thing that can create fatalism is laziness, and your excuse for being lazy is, well, I can't do anything anyway, so I'm not going to do anything. But I think that the main influence in fatalism is culture, how you grew up.
The reason that people have such phenomena in their lives, like blind faith, superstitions, or even being fatalistic, is that at some point all of these things worked for them. They actually saw it happening in their lives. And now it's required upon them to make a shift. What I'm thinking of is, let me give you an example. If, you know this expression, if you break a mirror, you have 7 years of bad luck.
Yes.
Yeah, remember that one? Yes. I'm just thinking of one example. There are millions, don't walk under a ladder, etc. Now, a certain individual had broken a mirror, had walked under a ladder, and, all hell broke loose. So they make a link, albeit a wrong one. And so that's how they came to this conclusion. So what I'm saying is that life has sometimes provided evidence of one pinch of salt in a sack full of flour as far as their beliefs are concerned, and that is why we cling on to them. And Sister Denise, we cling on to these things because we do not have anything else.
No, I don't think so. I think that it's cultural. There are some cultures which operate on the basis of stories.
Mm-hmm.
Ancient cultures, primitive cultures. So some great leader, spiritual authority, guru, says, this thing happened one time, and that makes it a law. Every time this thing happens, the same thing will follow. And everybody said yes, yes, yes. That's how it happens. And part of my work is to challenge that whole way of teaching, because it is a way of teaching. These are called, in India, these are called moral stories. In Europe, you had fables and all of this, which is how children were taught how life is. And they are, and very young children, very gullible. And so whatever the adults say, they are going to assume that it's true. In Christianity, so much is taught by way of parables. And so it's a mentality which is pre-scientific that has created that. And there are vast swathes of humanity which are still pre-scientific. And they all go in that way because that's the custom, that's the culture. And then when science came in with Galileo, this huge conflict between science and religion began, because religion is the purview of blind faith, superstition, fatalism, and moral stories. And this is how they teach people, and they don't expect people to be logical or coherent or rational. And they don't want them to be, because otherwise they won't follow the religion. Whereas science is a different type of religion, a different type of thinking, where you say, if it cannot be measured, it doesn't exist. It has to be rational, logical, coherent, otherwise it's not valid. And so you have these two different modalities which are in conflict. And currently, the scientific approach is the dominant one. And the problem with that, which many people are complaining about, is that because science is non-ethical and non-moral, the religious people have said that it is going to destroy the goodness of people. Or they will say, they will point to different scientific things and say, this is the reason why there is an increase of crime, because people have set aside the religion. Now, what I feel is important is that religion has definitely lost power because the purity is no longer there. It's very compromised by people's spiritual depletedness and inability to practice their religion. It's practically impossible to practice your religion properly because of the way it's set out. And then the scientific people, they operate on a pleasure-pain principle, that if it feels good, it must be good. and not necessarily so. So you have a third energy that's coming in at this time, which I believe is connected with this very active condition of God during this period of time of change, where knowledge of the laws of karma is very clearly stated, where understanding of the difference between choice, destiny, and karma is clear. This is why we're having this program, is to look at this new information that's coming in and that's making science and religion clearly insufficient as an explanation of what's going on in the world.
You speak of soul consciousness a lot. How do you get to believe that you're a soul when you can't see it? So in this discussion of blind faith, tell me on what is your faith based?
Well, I would not use the word faith.
What would you use?
I would use perception.
Do you perceive yourself to be a soul?
If I didn't, I wouldn't think that I am.
What is your definition of perception?
You have sense perception, visual perception, so if your eyes are working properly, you will see things that are visible. If your ears are working properly, you'll hear. If your nose is working properly, you'll smell. If your sense of touch is right, you can tell temperature, texture, all sorts of things through touch. And if your tongue is working well, you can taste. There is something called the sixth sense, which is much more refined. Sometimes people call it intuition. The way I understand it is the mind is directly perceiving things that are non-physical phenomenon. So just because something is non-physical and intangible to the five senses, it doesn't mean that it cannot be perceived by the mind. And when you're in a spiritual practice, you activate this sense. So, for example, you may be given the details, what exactly is a soul, and then you can check it against your internal criteria. You can see whether it is internally coherent, whether there are self-contradictions, and things like this. So then you apply your perception to what you know, and you find that yes, you can perceive it, and that you activate that capacity. And then it's not a matter of faith or blind faith or anything, it's just part of life, normal. You know, just like you cannot see in the air that there are radio waves, but you can use instruments to detect them. So this is rather like an instrument which will detect things that your five senses cannot detect. But just because it's not physical doesn't mean it's not there. The problem with blind faith is there's no way they can have any consistency about detecting it. So it becomes like a hysterical relationship with intangible and illogical realities that they believe in.
What is your message then, Sister Denise, for people who are in the throes of their own blind faith, their own superstition, and their own fatalistic attitudes? Are you saying drop that and use your head? What is the message? Us humans won't let go of something easily until perhaps we've got something better.
I do not think that I have a message for people who are in blind faith, fatalism, or superstition. But someone who grows up in that culture of blind faith, fatalism, and superstition, they also do not get that in their education. They have lots of access to internet, and they see that this blind faith, superstition, and fatalism belongs to a past era, so they don't really subscribe to it that much. Now, people like that, young people, they will naturally make the shift, and then they will have, if they want to know more, and they may come across this show, then they will hear what we have to say. So I think I'm not directing my message to this group or that group or the other group, but I'm simply saying, let us look at the whole question of karma, philosophy, destiny, and choice. And if you're interested, come and listen. But I'm not trying to convert anybody or prove anything or anything like that. That's a waste of time.
So if someone's interested in really understanding the law of karma, and who is interested in making a shift towards something that's actually logical and where he could ameliorate the quality of his life, how would he go about it? Somebody who has a whole lot of superstitions and who realizes that this can't go on anymore. I cannot go on like this anymore because this just doesn't make sense anymore.
Well, the person would already be doing whatever I could tell them to do. They would be already Googling this and that. They would be already investigating. You see, the world we live in at the moment, anytime any question pops into your head on any subject, you can go onto your computer and put that word into your browser and you will get all kinds of hits. And you will get some information that you like, some information that you don't agree with. You can go on to Wikipedia and you can get some pretty good information. And the natural way that people find out things is they follow the leads. Everybody is a researcher nowadays. It wasn't like that before. The media and communication can no longer assume that the people don't know anything. They know all sorts of things. They want to know more. Information is overload. It's everywhere. You need to be able to discern what to go for, what not to go for. And there's every imaginable recipe for everything, you know, and answer to every question. And some of the answers are totally off the wall. And so you need to research and check and develop these abilities within yourself and go for the things that correspond to your criteria for whether something is credible or not.
As far as faith is concerned, I think no human being wants to believe that their faith is based on something that's not real. Can one make the shift from blind faith to seeing reality as it is?
Well, as soon as you have a doubt, you know, doubt is a seed. And if what you're believing, you think, nah, this doesn't fit, it's not right, you know, the seeds of doubt will destroy that belief system. This is why belief systems shift over time, because somebody got a doubt, and that person who had the doubt, they're a heretic until majority of people have a doubt. Then that's the way it goes. So human ideas do develop, they do evolve, and they evolve through doubt in what everybody else believes.
So doubt in this context is a good thing.
Very good.
Okay. So that doubt will lead to research, which will lead to growth.
Yes.
Okay.
Healthy doubt.
Healthy doubt. That's an actual thing?
Well, I think so, and if not, we make it.
Right. Okay. We've invented something. Healthy. Sister Denise has invented something. Healthy doubt. Okay. So I think that brings today's episode to a close. Thank you. Enlightening discussion. And so there you go. If you at home, I would ask you to look at your own faith and ask whether there's a sense of contentment in who you believe and what you believe. And we all have superstitions, we all have our quirks and beliefs that may not make sense to others but make sense to us. We ask you to revisit those as well and ask yourself the simple question, is this working for me? And then you'll know whether to pursue that course of action or not. Thank you for today, and thank you for joining us. Take care and goodbye.